Hello, my beautiful YouTube viewers, my amazing, wonderful students. Today we are starting our series on Adobe Illustrator. Couple of bits of business before we get started. Number one, obviously this is going to be the first in a series because you guys know how detailed I get. Okay, I can't just be like, and this is the pen tool, and this is how you color things. No. Okay, you guys already know that's not how I teach, so, you know, brace yourselves, get a notebook, get a pencil. Number two, this is not going to be a comprehensive end-all, be-all guide to all the magical, wonderful things that Illustrator can do. No, this is fashion-centric, design and illustration for fashion-centric, just like my hand drawing tutorials. And so I'm going to focus on the tools that I use in the industry and in my illustration work. There are tools I actually don't ever use because I've only ever worked in fashion, really. Number three, I work on a Mac. Okay. This 28-inch desktop is Pretty Baby, and I love her dearly. I use a wireless keyboard, I use a mouse with my right hand, and I use a trackpad with my left hand, and I'm going to teach you guys key commands along the way because I use key commands a lot. Key commands are when you press keys to get the computer to switch tools instead of clicking on each tool with the mouse. Lots of people prefer to use like Wacom tablets and pens. I think Wacom is actually a brand, and there are different brands who do the digital pen and tablet tools. I don't have any experience with those, so yeah, I've just always used a mouse. It's done me just fine. But then again, I've never had a job where I had to sit on Illustrator for hours and hours and hours. Okay, so I've always worked in Illustrator, but not so much where I felt the need to invest money and time on this other skill set. So just throwing that out there that I don't know how to do that. I mean, you guys know I'll always be upfront with you on things I don't know. I'll just tell you, you know, I ain't got no shame about that. To reduce wrist stress, I definitely, you know, the trackpad and the key commands used with my left hand definitely do help with the wrist stress, and I always do stretches after a long day on the computer, you know, things like that. I use a Mac, but the things I'm going to teach you guys, obviously there's going to be some translation stuff, like command on a Mac is control on a PC most of the time, and some key commands are going to be different, but the skills will translate. And so if you're on a PC, still watch the tutorial. I'm sure you'll be able to pick up a thing or two. Unfortunately, I don't think I can answer a lot of PC related questions because it's been a long minute since I worked in Illustrator on a PC. So that's not Mac snobbery. That's just, I mean, that's just what it is. Now that we got all that business taken care of, I want to start by answering the most commonly asked questions. Number one, students ask me constantly, what is the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator, and when do I use them? Okay. So to understand Illustrator and Photoshop, you have to understand there are two types of digital graphic files, vector and raster. This is vector art, where everything is a line drawing, basically. This is raster art. A photograph is the most common kind of raster art, and everything is colors and subtleties and light and shadow, all of that, okay? Now, vector art, because they're line drawings and they're created by basically super fancy math, vector art in Illustrator is infinitely scalable. Well, not infinitely. It's not a microscope, for God's sakes. So you can zoom and keep zooming And you see how the lines still remain super crisp? I'm at 13,000% zoom and the lines are still crisp. And that's vector art. When you get to raster art, you have to think about the DPI. DPI stands for dots per inch. And high resolution, high DPI, that means there's a lot of dots per inch. And so you can get clearer images with more subtle colorations and shadows and highlights and effects. Not infinitely scalable. So take something like this and you keep zooming and keep zooming and keep zooming and keep zooming. And it starts getting grainy and pixelated, right? So here, I'm only at 3,000% zoom and already it is barely readable and you see all these little squares. Those are the dots per inch, okay? When something gets really pixelated and grainy and low res, that means that you can make out individual pixels because raster images are created with little tiny dots, little tiny squares called pixels, okay? So I use Illustrator when I am drawing most figure drawings and basic fills of color and flats, whether they are flats like this that are just the outlines or flats where they are filled in with the color or the print that the garment is going to be in. I use Photoshop for photo work, so I will download or scan in photographs, scan them in at the DPI that I want. Okay, if I want to later print them out or blow them up or make them look super nice and professional, I will scan it at a super high DPI. If it's a fun, cute little picture that I just want to send to my grandma real quick, then I'm going to use a much lower DPI because I don't want to send my grandma giant files. You manipulate photos, you can layer all kinds of blur effects and distortion effects with photos, and most commonly in the fashion industry, you use Photoshop to layer your photos and create collages for your mood boards. Pull all these images, slap them down, overlap them, use your text tool and type up your little blurb and your titles and you're good to go. I am vaguely aware that some people draw things in Photoshop. I don't actually know how to do that. I draw in Illustrator and then I manipulate photos in Photoshop. And if I want to bring a drawing into Photoshop, I just draw it in Illustrator because it's so easy to do and then import it into my Photoshop file. So that's how I use Photoshop and Illustrator. Mood boards for Photoshop and line sheets and the things that go into line sheets on Illustrator. You cannot manipulate photos in Illustrator. Okay, that's why you have the two separate tools. Next question, what's InDesign? I don't actually know. I told you guys, if I don't know something, I'll just tell you. I've never used InDesign in my life. I have InDesign because I bought the package that includes InDesign when I was ordering my Adobe products. And I've opened it before. I am told that it is used for layouts for books, booklets, leaflets, whatever, and that I am probably going to have to learn it to format the book that I'm working on. Yes, I am working on an illustration rendering textbook, and no, I don't know when it's coming out. Oh my God. Anyway, so I'm told that that's what I'm gonna have to need to learn InDesign in order to format my book. Anytime I think about it, the phrase comedy of errors comes to mind. Oh, it's gonna be so fun. So yeah, InDesign is for layouts. I don't know how to use it yet. If I learn it and if I do awesome at it and if there's interest, I might do a video like, I don't know, 3 years in the future. The next most common asked question when it comes to Illustrator and Photoshop. What is the difference between CMYK and RGB color modes? why do I get these random questions about those color modes? Especially in Photoshop, you'll see here image mode, and you see grayscale, RGB, and CMYK. Those are the 3 most common used ones. Number 1, I never use grayscale, okay, whether it is for Illustrator or for Photoshop, because I want the option to manipulate my grays even if I do something that is all completely grayscale. Sometimes I want warm grays, and sometimes I want French grays, and sometimes I want vaguely purpley grays, whatever. And you can't have those kinds of grays if you do a straight up grayscale. Okay? What you want to do if you want everything to look very like grayish, purplish gray, is you're going to desaturate all the colors so that it is barely purple, but it still has color in it. CMYK versus RGB. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K is for black. CMYK color mode is for printing. Have you ever bought ink cartridges for your printer? They look like this. This one is for cyan, this weird blue color. And so when you are making anything, drawing or photo, that involves printing, the final outcome is you're going to print it in, you're going to print a line sheet, you're going to print a lookbook, you're going to print a sign. You want CMYK color mode. That's what your printer uses. That's what your fancy pants professional printer uses. They're going to ask you to format your images CMYK, because when you do that, for each color, it'll say like this % cyan and this % magenta, this % yellow, this % black is the output for your printer to understand this color. Okay? It's very mechanical and technical like that. And so if you're going to print, use CMYK. RGB is the color mode used for when your final outcome is going to be light display, like movies or websites. So if you're creating graphics, that's going to be part of a website, RGB. If you're going to print it, you're going to save a new copy and format it CMYK to send off to your printer. Okay? If you are putting together your portfolio, and let's say you created mood boards, and you're going to have a portfolio online on your website, and you're also going to print it out for your actual paper book to carry around with you. Okay? You're going to format an RGB for your website. You're going to format a CMYK for your printer so that you could do the large format prints with the correct colors. Oh, can we draw something now? Okay, let's draw something now. Your new best friend. I'm going to introduce to you your 2 new best friends, okay? Number 1, your pen tool. Here is your pen tool here. Click to get started. Click, click, click. Older versions of this, you would just click the end to finish. This newer version, it doesn't want to do that. So what I usually end up doing is hitting A, or just moving on to another tool, and it'll change the cursor and finish the line. If I want a curve line, I click, I put my point at the end. I don't release my mouse, but I drag it and I move it around until I get the curve that I want. Newer versions of Illustrator will do this thing where they predict how you want the flow of your line to go and will do a suggested line. And so if you click there, that's what they're going to draw. If you don't want to do that, you want to change direction, you want a whole new line, what you're going to do is re-click that anchor point, and then you can go wherever direction that you want. Okay? So again, you could do this and follow that curve, or you can re-click that anchor point and then create your own crazy business and then finish at your other anchor point. With all of your tools, or almost all of your tools in Illustrator, okay, you're gonna click down and you're gonna see all these other tools hidden under the main tool, okay? Click on Add Anchor Point tool, and you can take your Pen Plus tool and click a new point in here. And then you're gonna switch to your Direct Selection tool. You have 2 ways of selecting your stuff. You have the black arrow, which is your selection tool, key command V. And then you have your direct selection tool, the white arrow, key command A. Your direct selection tool selects the entire thing. And then you can go ahead and move this thing around to format things on your page. If I wanted to take these and I wanted to put them over here, I would use the V. Now, the white arrow is for selecting tiny little spots. So if I wanted to take this new point that I had added and stretch it out, I would use the white arrow to just select this tiny point. If I wanted to just move this line segment over, I would just select these two and I would just move this part over. Okay, so there's the direct selection tool. Okay, so you can manipulate your drawings in this way. You can also use the delete anchor point tool where you've decided, oh no, I don't want this huge triangle sticking out anymore. And you can just boop, and it'll pop right back in. I really want you guys to get in the habit of drawing complete shapes. Okay? And this is important for flats and for figures. So this is a flat for an asymmetrical waist cincher that I designed, and has this strap that comes up over the shoulder and down across the back. These areas that are gray, that is the back of the garment that you're seeing from the front. Okay? And then this is the back of the garment, and then this is the front of the strap, right? You take a piece like this, and you only see this curve, right? And so you don't really need to draw this corner up here, okay, since you only see this line. But later you're going to want to fill it with the gray, and so you need to create a complete shape. If I don't create a complete shape and I just draw this line, the line that is visible from the front, then when I fill it, this is all I get. I'm not going to be able to fill that whole space. And so it will look really weird. Also, later on, if you do these in complete shapes, it's really easy to go ahead and fill them in with a color later. Ta-da! And now you have a red strap. Some people, when they do these flats, they will do the entire outline of the garment and then put in the interior lines. I don't like doing that. Number one, what if I want a color block? Number two, what if I want a style where I just take the strap off later? If I had drawn the entire silhouette and then put in my interior lines, then I would have to redo the whole flat in order to create this strapless style. But with it like this, all I have to do is delete the strap and it's a whole new flat, and I didn't have to redraw anything. Later on, when you are building your flats library, this is going to be so helpful. For example, let's say you do this cute little jacket for fall. You know, it's got a regular little notch collar, you know, notch lapel and collar, you know, regular sleeves, you know, has a fitted waist, and it's super cute, and it sells really well for you, and the fit is really good, the body is really popular, and so you want to run it again in the springtime. But let's say, oh, you know what? I want to do, let's see, like a 3/4 sleeve with a cute little poof detail on the top of the shoulder cap, and then leave the body because the fit and the proportions are really nice and everything with the body. If you do flats the way I do, where everything is an individual shape, all you would have to do is go into that jacket flat, not flap, and just erase the sleeves and just do a new sleeve. Draw a new sleeve with a little poof and a shortened sleeve, put it on your old flat, and you're good to go. If you had drawn the outside silhouette, then you would have to like use your scissor tool to cut that off and take this off, and then that's annoying. It's annoying. Your other best friend, aside from your pen tool, is your undo command. And that's your Command Z, or you can go into Edit and hit the undo button. Don't you wish your life had a Command Z? Like all the time. Every time I put my foot in my mouth, I'm like, ooh. I love the scissors tool because I can cut up my segments and then add more elements. Like take this strap, for example. Let's say I want to add a buckle here. I want this strap to be adjustable, and I think it would look really cute with a buckle right here. And so I drew this curve. And I would draw this curve anywhere just so that I have a nice, continuous, beautiful curve, and then I could cut it up instead of trying to draw two line segments awkwardly and make sure that all connects together. So I would take my scissor tool here, key Command C, and sometimes it is hiding under the eraser tool. Click the path, and then I want my buckle to be about this long, so I'm going to click this path, and I'm going to click this path. I'm going to use my direct selection tool and delete this part and delete this part. I'm going to use my pen tool, key Command P, and join this anchor point to that anchor point to finish that section. And then I'm going to do the same for the bottom section. And then later I can draw in my belt buckle sitting right here. The vast majority of garments are symmetrical. That means same on both sides. And even if there are elements in the interior that are asymmetrical, a lot of the time the outside shape is going to be symmetrical. And so you guys know how lazy I am, right? I don't even like sharpening pencils. What makes you think I want to draw the same thing twice? And so whenever I have a symmetrical design, I will draw only one side, and then I will copy and paste a mirror image and then join the two halves in the middle. I'm gonna show you how to do that. Here's my flats template, okay? And I have a video on how to make your own flats template. Go watch that. We're not gonna get into that right now. And I always use a flats template, whether I'm drawing by hand or on the computer, because I want my flats to all be in proportion to each other and to be uniform. So I scanned this in that I drew by hand, and it's a JPEG. You can open JPEGs in Illustrator, you just can't manipulate them. And here it is, and it's in its own layer. And what I'm going to do is double click on the layer, and I'm going to click template. And what that ends up doing is it'll dim your image to whatever percentage you have here. And it's going to lock the layer so it doesn't move even though you're clicking and dragging on all over the place on top of this drawing. And then later, when you're printing them out, your templates don't print out. This is really important because as a student and as a teacher, I've seen students get so frustrated. They're like, it's right there. Why is it not printing? And sometimes they forgot that it's in a template layer, and that's why it's not printing. So here's my template layer, and then I'm going to click a new layer, and I'm going to use my pen tool to draw my flat on top of my flat template. Zoom in, and for the purposes of demo, we're going to start with something really simple. I'm going to draw a pencil skirt. And like I mentioned before, I'm only going to draw one half of the pencil skirt. So using my pen tool, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to do a nice curve for the waistband. Not super curved, just a little bit curved. Click that so that I can change direction. And then I'm going to click, drag until I get the curve I want, and then release my mouse. And then I'm going to pull down to the length I want, just above the knee, and I want this line to be perfectly straight. And this one, it has all these snap options and everything, but if your version of Illustrator doesn't, just hold down the Shift key and it will make sure that the line is perfectly straight up and down. And then there's your line. And then again, perfect straight line for the hem. I'm going to switch tools over so that the pen tool just kind of releases that end without creating an enclosed shape. A question I get a lot when it comes to flats is, when do I know when to curve lines and when do I know when to make lines flat? Whenever you're drawing your flats, you always have to imagine the garment flat on a table. Like if you're making this into if you're making a pattern piece for this front, this line is going to be curved. Okay? Waistlines are generally curved, but your hem is going to be straight on your pattern. And it's going to look straight when it's smoothed out and flat on your table. And so this is why I drew this one straight. With most bottoms, you're going to see that the waistband is a little bit higher in the back than it is in the front. And so you need to draw that on your flat. And it's going to join up here. And then remember, you have to create a whole shape so that you can fill in the back. So I'm just going to do that. At this point, I would add my darts, I would add my pockets, any style lines that you're going to have on the other side. You know, if you had princess seams, you know, patch pockets, top stitching, any symmetrical design element, you would draw them here at this stage. Okay. And then you're going to use your selection tool and select the whole garment, all your elements, and you're going to go and reflect copy. Okay, it's hidden back here behind your rotate tool is your reflect tool, key command O, not 0. Hit that, hit enter, and you're going to get this dialog box, and you can select which angle or whether you want to flip it horizontal or vertical. You're going to hit copy to get a copy. I know some of this verbiage is so confusing. And you're going to use your arrows to move everything over. Ta-da! And here's your skirt. Except you want to join all these bits together so that you just have one front of skirt and one back of skirt. Just a side note, whenever I'm drawing the initial line drawings for flats, I always leave my color fill at nothing. I don't want colors and stuff blocking things and, you know, kind of getting in the way. I just want to draw the lines and then fill in with color later. So you're going to join up all these little bits, okay, because right now they're just kind of sitting like this. So you're going to use your zoom tool and you're just going to get in here. Use your direct selection tool and you see you have these 2 points. Yeah, you could just bring them closer together, but what you really want to do is create the solid, complete shapes. Okay? And I only separated them just so you guys could really see what I'm doing. So what you're going to do is select just these 2 points, and then first you're going to average the 2 points. Okay, so the 2 points are going to come together, you know, making up the difference in the distance. Okay, and that's Option Command J. Average both horizontal and vertical, okay. And then you're going to hit Command J, and that's to join. And now that is a completely joined line segment. Here we go again. Just collect these 2. Option Command J, boom. Here. Make sure you're using your white arrow. If you use your black arrow, you're going to select the whole garment. And if you average all those points, you end up with this like weird asymmetrical star in the middle. Always hit Command 0 to get back to your document size. Sometimes you're like scrolling around and you've zoomed too much and you're like, where'd my drawing go? Just hit Command 0 and it'll bring you back to your document. Okay. And so now you have your outside basic pencil skirt shape, and then you have the shape for the back of the skirt that you would see from the front. Okay? And now you're going to fill them in with color. You have these 2 colors. The box is the color for the fill, and the outline of the box is the color for the stroke. So when you change this, you can change your outlining color to burgundy if you wanted to. Okay. So I'm going to fill this in with blue. And then I'm going to color the back gray to show that it's the back. Click that and you get a color picker box like this. Now you can get a color box like this and color picker box, and I'm going to choose a gray like that. Now, because we drew this after we drew the front, it's layered on top. So all you need to do is go into your layers, click this arrow, and you're going to see all the paths. Within each layer, each path or each shape that you draw gets its own sub-layer. So just click on that path and just reorder them by clicking and dragging, and then it gets moved to the back. And now you have your pencil skirt flat. Let's pretend it has darts and a zipper and pockets. I love pockets in women's wear. And all the top stitching and all the beautiful things that you would add to make this pencil skirt beautiful and unique to you. And there you go. You know what I'm going to tell you next, right? Go and practice. And you're like, okay, easier said than done. All right. These are my favorite ways to practice. Number one, start by tracing. So I would just download an image of a dress that you like and try drawing it, okay? Like, let's try to draw this skirt. Pick up my pen tool, start at the waist, and is this a straight line? No, there's a slight curve to it, so I'm gonna address that, and I'm gonna give it a slight curve, and then I'm gonna give it another slight curve. Oops. And then I'm gonna click on that anchor point again to change direction, move around the corner. And I'm going to create this curve, and then I'm changing direction again, and then I'm changing direction again, and so forth and so forth. And try to be as exact as possible so that you're really getting a handle on controlling your hand and the pen tool. You could do that, or you can start drawing on an illustration you have. Here's a 1/4. That was key command plus to make it bigger. And I'm just following the curves of her face. That's how I learned my very first Adobe Illustrator class. Our teacher gave us files that were just basically a series of crazy curves. And we were supposed to create a template layer with that page and use our pen tool on top to trace those curves as exactly as possible. And that's really how you learn how to practice and control your pen tool. I think that was enough information for one day. Go practice using your pen tool. The next Adobe Illustrator tutorial is gonna come up in a few weeks, maybe like once a month or so. So go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already to get an alert for the next video. And I'm gonna go over more tools and tricks then. And please don't forget to share, subscribe, like, give me a thumbs up. I don't know. Spread the word, all the good things. Yeah. I do have some students who are Luddites and they are kicking and dragging their feet, and they don't want to learn Illustrator. But let me explain something to you. In this modern day, if you want to be a working designer in the industry, you have to learn Illustrator. You have to. The only people who can get away with working actively in the industry and not working in Illustrator is if you're rich enough or powerful enough that you can hire minions to do it for you. But honestly, if you don't even know the rudiments of Illustrator, you're gonna look like one of those dumb, ignorant bosses. And a lot of us already know what it's like to work for people like that. Do you want to be someone like that? The answer is no. The answer is no. When I was first learning it, I think the phrase kicking and screaming come to mind. I see this a lot when someone is really good at drawing by hand. They don't want to do it on the computer because they're like, I already know how to do this thing. No, it's such a completely different skill set, you guys. You need to go learn Illustrator. And I'm not saying that just so you'll keep watching this tutorial series. No, this is a skill that working designers absolutely need. All right, so go practice. Hashtag always be practicing. Hashtag practice not magic. Hashtag if your first one sucks, you're right on track. And I will see you in the next video.